Welcome to the Know Your Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Vipul Basania, and today's guest is Sharran Srivatsaa. Sharran is well known for being a serial entrepreneur and taking a company, Teles Properties, from 300 million to 3.4 billion in the space of a few short years, which is absolutely incredible. He's also the now CEO of Kingston Lane and the founder of the 5 a.m. Club, and is a sought after speaker that's mentioned in Forbes, Huffington Post, Wall Street Journal. I mean, the list goes on. So the most important thing, though, I think for people to take away is that he's the true epitome of the immigrant rags to riches story, because he came with no connections, no money, but yet somehow reached the top of his mountain. So Sharran, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, Vipul, thank you so much for having me. And I don't think a lot of people know how hard it is to kind of connect with people, get them on the show, schedule them, put this together, and then just take this and package this and have it to your community for them to experience this conversation of two friends kind of, talking where they can eavesdrop, right? So thank you for doing this, because I know there's a lot of effort that people don't see. And so, and I know how hard it is. So thank you for doing it.
No, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. So I'm excited that you're here. And typically, as we were talking about off air, typically I don't start with right from the beginning and then work my way to where we are today. But in this case, I think it's important because from where you started to where you ended up, that's not the average person's story. I think it's important for people to see the growth in your mindset, but then also the action that you took to get to where you were. So take us back to India. What part of India, and what was it like growing up in that time?
Yeah. So, every time I think about it, I got goosebumps right now. Every time I think about it, it's a very humbling story, because I stand here as proof that an ordinary person with a bunch of help and a bunch of initiative can do well, right? And I outline it with a bunch of help. There's no way that I got the modest success that I have without a lot of help. So I really want to say that I got a lot of help along the way. So the story is, as I think about it, I grew up in this. I was born in New Delhi, India. I grew up. I was the only child of two working class parents who were working their faces off. A very, very middle class. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in this city called Chennai, or Madras, when I was growing up. 14 million people. We lived in this little apartment, and I didn't have a room. I mean, I slept between my parents for the first 13 years of my life. I had one little cubby in a closet, which is where I could keep my things. But the interesting part with Pool is I was happy. I didn't know any different. Right? That's all I knew. I didn't know anything else. And it was amazing because the struggle was I was kind of an average student. I was a B-ish student. I think I had some learning disabilities, but in India, they just say you're stupid. So like, they just thought it's just like, there's no sensitivity towards any of that. I was not musically talented. I was tone deaf. I was colorblind, so I couldn't do any art. I had some decent athletic skills. So for somebody like me, I was the prime target to be below average, and below average means being bullied. That's when you're below average and everyone can beat you at everything, you're the perfect candidate to be bullied. And I grew up, I don't share this often, but I grew up being bullied. And it was like, when I see bullies now, both in person, in casual acquaintances or in professional situations, it bothers me so much. And so the greatest thing is my parents recognized that. And my dad, one day, when I was about 11 years old, we were sitting on a park bench, and my dad told me, he's like, "Hey, Sharran, got to have this conversation with you." And I'm 11, right? Like, that's crazy. And he says to me, "We got to get you a capability that will open the world for you." I was like, "I'm good. Like, I don't know what this means, but like, that's interesting." And he said, "Hey, you're tone deaf, you're colorblind, you're a B student." And he looks in front of him, and there are these tennis courts. And he says, "Hey, do you think you can play tennis? This may be your ticket out of the country." And I'm like, where am I going? I'm 11 years old, right? And he started talking me through this Vipul, where he said, "Wouldn't it be amazing to have a bigger and better future? Because your future here is limited by so many people that are clawing onto your success. If you can find one capability and we can over-index on that capability, you can have a great life." And that day when I was 11, my father and I made this bond where we said everything was secondary to tennis. Everything. He just said, you don't have to go pro. You just have to get out of this country. And my dad told me that. And it was not the fact that, when I say support, it was not the fact that I was good at tennis or anything like that. It was the singularity of focus, right? Like the first chapter of my book, hopefully coming out in 2019, is the singularity of focus. And it's not just what you or I believe, it's what the community around you believes, right? So my parents and I all knew that I had only one goal: to do well. So I woke up in the morning, play tennis, went to school. School was secondary, play tennis in the evening, train. I needed to get good enough to get recognized by someone in the UK, someone in Australia, someone in New Zealand, someone in the US, so I could just get out. And that was the only goal. And it was amazing from 11 to 16 and a half, like for 5.5 years, that is all I did. And that taught me one thing: if you can actually believe in the singularity of focus, just like what you're doing, if you can believe in the one thing and get your community to support you with that, you could probably do anything. And I think a lot of times is we dabble too much and we don't focus enough. So that was the kind of the early childhood of me trying to figure out the path out of India.
So that's interesting. I was going to say, so first off, what did your dad do at this time?
So my dad and mom, so my dad was a professor and in a university. My mom was a nutritionist. Both of them realized that they didn't have enough to get me out of the country. So they both quit their jobs and they become entrepreneurs, and they started a small advertising company. And you ask an amazing question, because at the end of when I was 16 and a half, we had achieved the dream. I actually had a chance to come to the US, but my parents couldn't afford it. They just didn't have the money. So it was now 5.5 years of working on this goal and it not becoming a reality because they didn't have the resources. So my parents, this is crazy and you'll appreciate this. My parents sold everything that they had. Everything. They sold everything that they had. And they were literally like living not in with friends, with their family. They sold everything that they had. And they handed me one check. They said, here's a check. It's for 1 full years of university college tuition. It covers room, board, transportation, everything. But you got 1 year. After that, it's up to you. You can either come back and we'll figure it out, or you can, go light up the stars. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, imagine this, people, like that one check was the gateway to the greatest gift that I ever received, right? The greatest gift that I've ever received. And I always look at, we're invested in 13 companies right now. And I always ask the founders and the CEOs, I'm like, listen, you're thinking about how you left your last job, you had a great salary and you want to start your new gig. If I gave you 1 year's worth of your life expenses where you don't go crazy, but you don't have to change your lifestyle, I gave you the gift of 1 year. Could you just put everything in and make this amazing? And I'll tell you this, if I could give, if you and I could have 1 year of our life where you could live, your life wouldn't change, but you had a chance to build something amazing. For some people, but it's scary, but for people like you and I, and for your listener that's listening right now, what an amazing gift, right? So instead of wanting to buy the Ferrari, instead of wanting to buy the Tesla, instead of wanting to buy that apartment in downtown London, whatever you want, think about giving yourself, if you want to get out of the rat race, give yourself the gift of 1 year, just 1 year, and your whole life will change.
Yeah, I was just getting excited as you were talking there, because I was just thinking, like, if I found myself in that situation, that's exactly what I would do. No watches, no cars, no nothing. Like, I'd be happy with a pair of PJs and a t-shirt forever for the whole year, and just the time. Time is the most valuable thing. I don't think we realize that until most people, unfortunately, it's when it runs out. And that's the whole, element of this podcast is, know your legacy, figure it out quickly so that you can start working on it. That 1 year then can turn into 70, 80 years of just building instead of 1 year, like at the end of your life. So,
right.
No, it's interesting what you say. So, and do you think that the singularity of focus, what your dad taught you, what you were primed to do at that age, then carried forward to all the other successes you had?
Well, totally, right. So every time it becomes really easy. Whenever stuff gets stressful, I just say, okay, what is the only thing I care about and I like to think about the structure in like 90, 100-day periods, because anything less than that, it's easy to have too much of a short-term view. Like 100 days, I know I can get a bunch of stuff done. It's short enough where I can see the end, but long enough where I have some time to do it. So I'll give you what happened, and I'll tell a fun story. I share this very often. I've shared this the first time this year. I've shared it for like 18 years. And so you'll appreciate this a lot. So I took this check. I arrived in the States. I went to university in Iowa, and I handed this check to financial services. I said, hey, here's my check. I'm so proud, right? And the beautiful lady, she said, hey, welcome. You're good. Everything checks out great. Here are your keys to your dorm room. By the way, since it's an international check, it's going to take 10 to 14 days to clear. I was like, oh, no problem. I got it. Well, the funny part is I just didn't have any money. So I had zero money, but I had a dorm room. So I had no money for food for 14 days. So let's make it very clear. I was not going to die. Like I was going to be okay. But 14 days, I was not going to eat. And I was like, this is, I'm not used to this, right? So I went a couple of days just drinking a bunch of water, finding random soda pops that I could just, get some carbonation in me. And then I was walking along the pool, and I saw, it was in the evening, and I saw, it breaks, kind of makes me think, gives me goosebumps when I think about this. I saw a couple of guys throw 2 pizza boxes into a dumpster. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I could very much use a couple of slices of pizza right now. And I know that they threw it in the dumpster. I sat by the dumpster for a few hours. I waited till nightfall. Nobody was there. I put my hoodie on. I jumped in. I grabbed the 2 boxes of pizza, and I run to my dorm room just filled with shame. Like I couldn't imagine telling my parents this, right? And then I scrummaged through 3 or 4 slices of pizza, which was fantastic. And that lasted me, a day and a half. And then I did the same thing. My walking route veered me back to that dumpster. So I was just waiting around, and I saw a few guys, after it looked like a party, throw a couple of bags of big sandwiches, Subway sandwiches, inside the dumpster. So I did the same thing. I waited till nightfall. I jumped in, and I still remember how hot it was, what it smelled like, how vivid it was. I could barely see anything. There was a ray of a street light streaming through that I could just see a little spotlight in the dumpster. And I saw, I don't know if you have this in the UK, but I saw a box of Pop-Tarts, just toaster pastries, right? I saw a box of Pop-Tarts. So I grabbed the box of Pop-Tarts. I grabbed the Subway sandwiches, and just then I see 2 glowing eyes, and something whacked me in the face. And I start bleeding. And there was a raccoon fighting with me to grab these Pop-Tarts in the dumpster, right? And this is insane. Like, this is day 4 in the US. I'm fighting with a raccoon over Pop-Tarts that I'd never eaten in my life before inside a dumpster in the middle of Iowa. Like, it's just the craziest story ever. So I get scared. I kick the raccoon. I grab the Pop-Tarts. I jump out. I'm bleeding. I run over to health services. They give me a tetanus shot. And Vipul, I sit back, I get that, and I just start to cry. And I'm thinking, okay, if this is as bad as it's going to get, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And I sometimes think that all pain is relative. And sends me anytime somebody sends me a nasty email, and you get irritated at it and you want to fire back, or anytime someone double crosses you on a deal, or someone is dishonest, or something doesn't go your way, or you don't have money to run your company, or whatever it may be, I still think back and say, I dove into a dumpster and I made this work. Now, I'm not saying no pride in this, but pain is relative, right? Pain is relative. And that my only focus from that point onwards was, how can I make some money for another year? I have 1 year's worth. How can I make money for another year? So I went to school. I worked 40 hours a week. I scrubbed toilets. I made pizzas. I flipped burgers. And that led to kind of the growth of getting and paying for 4 years of college.
So did you end up finishing the rest of college? Because I know then afterwards you went into the corporate world of Goldman. And is that after you graduated? So you were doing these menial jobs throughout university to get you by.
Yeah, totally. I did that. that your listener will appreciate the story. So this was the time. Let me tell you how I made my second year's worth of tuition. So crazy that we were in our dorm rooms, and it was the first year they actually had put in Ethernet cables for internet into the dorm rooms. There's no Wi-Fi, right? It's like plug in Ethernet, which is amazing. Like you didn't have to go to the library. You could use your computers in the dorm room. But the Ethernet jacks were by the door and the desks were by the window, like 14 feet, right? So I was like, everyone's going to have this problem. So I went to Minneapolis. I went to a Radio Shack and I bought 3,000 feet of Ethernet cable on my credit card, right? And I had to sell it in 30 days. If not, I was screwed, right? Because my billing would come up. And I charged 5x the price on campus. I would cut it into 14 feet lengths, put the nibs on. I sold, I don't know, I sold enough for a whole year's worth of tuition. It was insane. In 30 days, because everybody needed internet, right? And I sold it out of my dorm room. And the best part was I didn't have any clothes because I'd just come in with 2 suitcases. So my entire closet was just rolls and rolls of Ethernet cable. And that's how I paid for my second year's worth of tuition. And then I did a bunch of jobs. But after I graduated, I was able to be on the ground floor of this was during the technology boom. I was able to be on the ground floor of a startup company. I was a computer science and math major, and I was pitching this white paper idea I had, and somebody said, "Hey, your white paper will go really well with this company. You should talk to these guys." I went and talked to them. I was part of the team. We built the company from the ground up, and we had a great exit. And so that was the first exit early that I got very, very lucky with.
So that brings me to a great point, actually. So just to be clear, what year was this? What year are we looking at?
This was 2001, 2002.
Okay, fine. And then from that point, I guess you went on to Goldman, is it, thereafter?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I took 5 years off. I was in the hospitality world. So I worked at Four Seasons Ritz-Carlton for about 5 years just to, take some time off. And then I got my MBA at Vanderbilt down in Tennessee. And then I was a banker both at Goldman Sachs in New York and Credit Suisse for 5 years.
Awesome. Yeah. So before we get into the stories there, because I know that whole thing was crazy for you getting into Goldman. That was a story in itself of persistence, because I know how long it took. But you mentioned earlier, I think you said you exited that company. And I know you've said before, it's not about the exit, it's about the options that you have. And I was wondering if we could get into that just a little bit, just a little segue, so that people really understand what that means. And then can that translate into other areas of your life? Because it almost feels like that sounds like people are starting with the aim of taking a shortcut, which isn't really what you want to do. So how can that message then translate?
Yeah, so the interesting part is we've had 3 exits so far, and none of the 3 were premeditated or pre-planned in any way. It just so happened that we had set the company up to build and grow and have profitability so that we would have a lot of options. And I got better over like my last exit was way better than the 2 before. But I'll tell you this, people don't realize this, but based on the contracts that were written, I didn't even realize what had happened to my ownership. Like there's a clause called a ratchet, and the ratchet basically means it's dilution. It squeezes you down. So assume that you have $50 worth of shares, and then suddenly at one point you have 1, right? So change the number from 50 million to 1. Some people are thinking that 1 million is great, but like 50 to 1, then you pay taxes, then you have 500, then you have loans, you pay 300, then you have 100, and like you're not employable right now. So you have 1 more year to get your next gig. Like people think that this is amazing, but what they don't realize is this is ratchet. So I learned the hard way. So my equity value in the company got squeezed down 50x, 50 times. And I had no idea, right? The company then went on to sell after we exited from it. The company then went on to sell for $550 million. And so everybody made a lot of money except the initial 4 founders, because we got ratcheted down. And before I learned the hard way, right? So now when I invest in companies, I actually tell our founders, hey, I'm going to put a ratchet clause in your contract, which means I'm going to own 50x more than you if you screw up. Please know what I'm doing here. They're like, wait, what? And so now they're now they actually work in line with transparency. But there was, my 3 partners from that time are still with the acquiring company 16 years later. I left that day it happened. So for a lot of people, it's just the options of what do you do when you build a great company. Everyone wants to build and sell something. The building and selling thing, that's not where all the joy is. Like you lose a big piece of your identity when you build and you sell something, because you're like, oh, the money will make up for it. I'll tell you, no, like you put your heart and soul into it. Your Instagram is branded your company. Like everything is your company, right? And suddenly it's just gone. Like you're not Sharran at Teles Properties anymore. It's gone, and you have to build it all over again, which is why I always say the personal growth component is super important. Like this, your self-identity needs to really be kind of in line and have the humility around it, because your identity can't be tied to a company. But for a lot of people it is, and unless that's the struggle, right? If you don't have it tied, then you're too disconnected. If you have it too tied, then you deal with the pain. So the balance is super, super hard. And that's why being a founder and entrepreneur is really, really hard. So my suggestion would be, the reason you build and grow a company is twofold, right? The first is threefold. First one is to create great impact, right? If you don't have great impact, like you shouldn't build it. The second one is to find your true expression. So if Vipul, you're really good at being creative, having great ideas, and thinking big picture, and you are building a company, you need to build a company around where you have that role. Otherwise, it's a grind. Like, why do you do operations when you don't want to do it, right? Like that would be painful. So number one, add great value. Number two, find your unique ability, right? And number three, grow so strategically that you have all the options in the world. And so you may not want to sell. You may want to sell. You may want to sell part of it. You may want to gift it to your children. You may want, if your company is successful, you can do anything you want, right? But to me, the joy is always the second thing, which is find your unique ability. And I'll give you the one very quick tip. When we were growing Teles, and I'm sure you want to get into that. When we were growing Teles, we grew 10x in 5 years. So we added close to $2.5 to $3 billion worth of equity value into the company. And after 3-4x of growth, my body completely broke down. Like I got really sick. I thought I could just power through it. I thought I could hustle and grind. I was Superman, and no one could beat me, and no one could do it any better. Like that's honestly what I thought. And I was like, how can I turn over parts of this to someone else? And we did a search for a chief operating officer for the company for 18 months. We couldn't find a good one. And then finally, a great operator kind of got connected with us. He came on board, partnered with us to help us grow the rest of the way. And I tell you, that was the period, Vipul, where I realized where I excelled and what my core genius was. And everyone has their core genius, what their core joy is, and what mine was not. And so when we started our new company, Kingston Lane today, to help agents around the world, I actually brought our COO on day one. So I said, I realized this joy way too late in the game. I don't mind sharing the pot with you, but from day one, this is going to be a grind, and I only want to do what I am good at. And that's a luxury, having a couple exits that gives you a little luxury to do that. But imagine that, right? Like the lesson that I learned was my joy is to create and grow and build. And I can't do HR, payroll, accounting. Like I'm not good at it. And so I have a partner, but I brought him on day one. And that was a huge, huge lesson. Now we both get to work in our genius, which makes us both happier generally most of the time.
See, it's interesting you say that because, and I'm glad you brought this up, because a lot of people, and that I've talked to about on the show as well, and just off air as well with friends and family, is we end up playing the role of the COO when we're supposed to be the CEO in our own lives, whatever that may be. If it's a business, if it's doing art, painting, dancing, or and we're stuck behind the cashier's desk, and if we're not playing our role in life, there's two things. We're stopping ourselves from being happy and excelling as far as we can, but then we're depriving the world of our gift.
Yes.
You've built the companies you've built and taken them to a level because you've put yourself in a position of enjoying the role that you do. And so I hope people can take that away. And what I want you to share, hopefully you can from your insights, is how can people recognize that early in their life? Because it seems like you realize those signs quite late, and obviously you've rectified that.
Yeah, super easy. And I'll give you this. It's super easy. Everyone should do this. So everyone has, I'm going to grab my phone here and show it to you. So everyone has some form of an iPhone or a smartphone, and there should be a notes application, right? And here's what I do. I have a couple of different notes applications. And one of my notes is, I love it when I ... right? And I hate it when I ... Those are the two titles of my notes. Every time I'm grinded by something, I'm ground by something, I'm irritated by something, I hate it, I don't do anything, Vipul. I just go in and I say, I hate it when I have to, do accounting. That's it. That's all I write, right? I love it when I jump on podcasts because it allows me to share. I just write everything that I love and everything that I hate. And hate is a strong word. You can use dislike, but when you start to just put the things that you love and the things that you dislike in your head, it's a jumble, right? Like our brains are not a whiteboard, are not an office to save your paperwork. Our brains are built to think and create and do stuff. It's not like a repository. Like that's not what we want. So to me, every time I have a feeling of something that I love or something that I dislike, I just write it down in those two categories. And it's amazing because, dude, I'll tell you this. When I'm with so I have two children. When I'm with my children, right before I go to bed, I write down most days, I love being with Neil. Neil's my son. I love being with Neil. And so if I am down right now, I just pull up my list. I look at the things that I love and I do something, right? I just do something. And so like, I love sending video messages that are funny to my friends. Like so I love doing it because I know my friend's going to get one from me. They're going to hit play and they're going to laugh. Right? It's like so I picture them doing that. It's really small. And I make a joke out of it, but imagine the joy I'm creating and the ripple effect I'm creating in their life. So when I'm down and I look at my list, I'm like, oh, I should just send Vipul a video message. I'm like, and I give you whatever inside joke we have. I do that. You love it. I love it. I put a smile on your face. It changes your endorphins. You go create better things. But none of that would have happened if I don't have a go-to list of things that I can do right now that can instantly change my state. And you start looking at the list of things that you're good at. And the next time you have a new gig or when you want to spend a Saturday or when you have a vacation, you just look at your list of things that you love and just plan those things. It's like super easy, right? As opposed to, and then the things that you don't like, we get honest by saying, hey, you know what? I don't like that. I don't like doing laundry. Like, I'm sorry. I'm not saying it's a menial task. I just don't like doing laundry. It's just very irritating to me. But I don't like whatever it may be. But I think the more things we can start to separate into those two lists, the easier we start to see who we are. And there's a pattern that arises, right? Because everyone's like, oh, I want to be the CEO, I want to be the CEO, I want to be the founder. But it's not about that. It's about what do you do when you are the founder? Like, what is the job? Is the job, every job you and I know, every job is a grind. Like every job, it has monotony of work. So the CEO has to do a bunch of podcasts, write a bunch of blogs, do a bunch of sales, take a bunch of meetings, fly a bunch of states, create growth, create movement, take on the risk, invest capital. Like if that is exciting to you, great. That's not going to be hard. But if that's not exciting to you, like you're going to be a stress ball, right? So I don't know if that helps you, but I love just separating that into the things that I love and the things that I dislike. I write the list down. And it gives me, and I have a lot of things in that list, by the way, but it allows me to know what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy in a very simple way.
That's an awesome way to do it. And I do something very similar. I think I might start doing what you do, what you've done. But the other thing I think you mentioned somewhere else is that you've done like journaling. And that's one of your daily things that you do. And that's how I use my notes is I've got like a few different notes set up and I just write down the patterns that I can see. Like if I see certain signs, like I've read The Alchemist. I love it. I don't know if you have you read The Alchemist? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I become attuned to the signs that I think are important in my life, I make a note of them, and then I reflect back. And then it's just a list of life experiences that I've had. And then if other people need advice or help, I just pull that up. Right, look, I can see what I've gone through, and now I can, help whoever else is going through something similar, because I'm slowly starting to intuitively pick up the direction of certain things I need to avoid and certain things I need to move toward. And not everyone is in tune with that. And so it makes sense to do something like that, because as you said, your brain isn't a repository, so to speak, but it's a machine that's constantly churning. And so you have to organize it using something like this. So
yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
So you made a really great point. So I want to offer this to the listener right now, right? The thinking that got you here is your best thinking. That's crazy. Like, think about that for a second, right?
Yeah.
The thinking that got you here is your best thinking. That's insane, right? So there's two outcomes from that. Number one, it would be nice if we all understood our thinking. We don't spend enough time thinking about our thinking, right? We don't spend that. I think the greatest separator from the good to the great is thinking about our thinking. And here's the funny part. Here's what I do. My exercise is really simple, very mundane, and it will generally take you or your listener maybe 5 minutes to do. It's called a brain dump. There's this lady, her name is Julia Cameron. She calls it the morning pages, right? I don't know if you've heard of that. Essentially, all it is you write, so not typing, you write. And for generally, this is not a gender thing, because women, I think, have significantly more gender intelligence than men do for emotional reasons. But women never think about someone is going to read their diary or their notes or their journal. The number one reason why men don't write things down is because they're afraid that someone's going to read their thoughts. That's insane, right? So here's all I do. I just write. I write whatever is in my head. So I'm like, hey, I had a great call with Vipul yesterday, and even before I finish the sentence, let's say I see a lady in a red dress, I just say, and I saw a lady in a red. I don't even stop. I just I am just documenting my thoughts until my brain stops thinking. Oh, and my elbow hurts, but I like the coffee. I just write everything, right? So you're essentially mirroring and matching your brain, and you're getting everything out. So as your brain is thinking, you're starting to think about your thinking. You're just observing. And it's very meditative. So you just take everything that you're thinking. There's no judgment. You're just reporting, and you report everything down on paper. Your hand's not going to be able to keep up. And so you're going to start scribbling, which is totally okay, because as soon as you scribble, you'll move to the next thought, and you just cycle through all the dark stuff. And as you cycle through all the stuff and you get everything out, the cleansing feeling is so insane. It's so amazing. It's almost like the reason why people feel great after they've worked out is they've put all their brain power into working out. Their body is tired, their brains are tired, and so they have no junk up here. Like, all the cobwebs are clean, so they're cleansed. That's why they feel good. Plus, they have endorphins and all of that. But if you're on a long plane ride and you have time to think, you're just like the reason we go on a long plane ride and don't have and it messes us up is like we have gone through these ideas over and over. It's messed up our psyche. But if we just every day, if we spend 5 to 7 minutes just taking everything down and putting it on paper, it starts to cleanse you off in a very powerful way. And for the high level entrepreneur that's listening right now, who's a man, who's a male, just get over it. No one's going to read your journal. Just write, and you will be a better person because of it.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to do it, because I don't do exactly that, but I do something similar before bed, where I just write out my thoughts, and then I just spend some time meditating and watching over my thoughts before I go to sleep, because I find that the final few thoughts that we have before bed are sort of the most important ones, as well as the ones first thing in the morning, because that's essentially what you leave in your brain. That's the final conversation you leave in your brain with, and that it's going to sit on that for the next 6 to 7 to 8 hours. So I just try and kind of wind down as the sunlight's going down. You turn your brain power down, watch the thoughts that are going in there, and then be wary of what you're putting in just before you knock off. So no, it's interesting you say that, and I hope people can take that away. Now, going back to so you graduated, I think you said you went to the tech startup, grew that, and then you exited. And then talk to us about Goldman and that process and the lessons you took away from that, because it sounds like from what I've heard, there are a few lessons that have sort of stayed with you up until today.
Yeah, no, totally. My time So what I realized was a big reason why I wanted to go into investment banking was one of my mentors told me that, hey, you got affected by how a deal was structured. You lost what could have been lifetimes worth of wealth creation. You lost that because how a deal was structured. If you go to Wall Street, that's the one thing you're guaranteed to learn is how deals get structured. And structuring of deals are super important. So I was like, how is a guy with no finance experience ever going to be able to get to the number one financial services firm with the hardest way, the hardest way to get into Goldman Sachs is through their MBA program. It is the hardest, right? So it's easier to get into Harvard Business School than it is get to Goldman Sachs, because you actually have to go to one of the Ivies to get to Goldman. It's just crazy. So I had a friend who got me an interview. So it was my first interview in the door. And I had 39 individual one-on-one interviews to get the job. So it was 39 interviews in New York, San Francisco, Chicago, and Atlanta. So 4 cities over a 4-month period, 39 scheduled one-on-one interviews. This is not including phone conversations for discovery, coffees, dinners. If you add up all of those, it was like well over 50 or 60. But this was this was one-on-one. And I would get questions like, hey, what is the best piece of advice you've ever heard, and tie that to the performance of the equity markets? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, that makes what does that even mean? I don't even understand that question. But what they were trying to do in the process was just rattle me, right? They just wanted to rattle me to see if I could keep the composure, separate the right lane and left lane, still have the communication skills, structure an answer, call them out on their BS, whatever it may be. But so I finally got the job. But the best part of after we got in, they still don't, it was only 30 of us in the training program. So 30 MBAs from around the country in the training program, a couple from the London School of Economics, et cetera. And it was 6 months of training. So it's 6 months before you can even talk. You can sit in your office seat and talk to a client, right? And I'm glad, because I didn't know anything about anything. So they actually taught me everything. So on day one, this was the funniest thing before. I would have never pictured this. The managing partner who were running our training program hands me a box, and the box this was like the BlackBerry days. So hands me a BlackBerry, hands me a corporate Amex card, and hands me a headset. And I go, what? I say, I understand the BlackBerry, I understand the Amex. Like, what is this headset? I said, I'm not making any calls. And he said to me, the headset's the most important part of what I can give you today. Put it on every single day. Don't plug it into anything. I want this to become a part of you, and it'll remind you of your training. I was like, what are you talking about? That makes no sense. So I put it on. We go through all the sales training. We go through the phone conversation training. We go through the NLP. We go through how you answer questions, because we spend a lot of our time on the phone. And it's amazing. Even today, Vipul, when I get to work, I put my headset on and I'm a completely different person, because it grounds me in my training, because it reminds me of all the hours, all the reps, right? All the reps in the gym. It reminds me of all the hours that went through that. And like even today, my wife will tell me, hey, if you're like, when I'm stressed right now and I'm thinking about if I have to go to a speech or whatever, I'll actually put my headset on while I prep, because it drives me into the state of learning, and I can actually build something around it. So for some people, it's their favorite song. For some people, it's like burning incense. For us, it was actually, and I never realized that. So they said they spend close to $1 million training each of us, so that we can get unleashed in the world. So my $1 million training is built into the ritual of putting my headset on, which is so awesome.
Yeah, that's crazy, because I think I've heard a few people say this actually, is that you get a trigger when you have a certain smell, or a certain thing that you put on, or certain thing that you write down, or whatever it might be. And that helps you get into the mind frame of doing the thing that you need to do at that time. So how does that translate for people who are listening to success in their own lives? So whatever that success might look like for them. In your sense, it was a sales environment, but for them, how would they go about finding that trigger and using it for whatever they're trying to achieve?
Yeah, great question. I'll tell you a story that may help everybody. So you live in the heart of London, so this probably is not a problem for you. So let me tell you the problem for me. So when I drive home, so picture this, I'm driving home, I pull into my driveway, I hit a button to open my garage door opens, and my kids who are 7 and 3 come running out, right? They're running out. The most joyful thing for a father is that when that happens. But here's what I used to do. Right when I pull into my garage, till the time I pulled into my garage, Vipul, I used to be on the phone. So my kids are banging on my door and my window, and I put my finger up and I say, 1 minute. I'll be right there, 1 minute. And I'm trying to finish my call. Of course, you can't finish your call up because so I say 1 minute and they keep banging. I say 1 minute. 2-3 minutes later, they give up and they just walk back in the house. This happens 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 3 months, 6 months. And then it got to a point one day where I pulled into my garage, I hit the button, the door opened, and nobody ran out. They never came out anymore. And I was like, okay, well, that's terrible. That was one of the most joyful things, but why would they, right? So I talked to my, we should talk about coaches and consultants. I talked to my coach about it. And I told her, I said, hey, the saddest thing happened to me. And I described the same story to her and she started laughing. She's like, hey, let me give you a way to fix that. So here's the trigger, right? So what I do today is I pull into my neighborhood, I pull over, right, like a street from my house. I finish my call, and then I put on a 5-minute meditation. Same guided meditation every day. I use an app, it's called Buddhify. It's the same track every day. I turn on my track, I sit in my car, I listen to it. It's 5 minutes of guided stuff. Once the meditation is done, I put my phone in airplane mode, I drive home, I pull in the garage, my kids come running out, I leave all my stuff in the car, and I walk in the door. It's amazing because without that 5-minute state change, I am not dad. I'm still Sharran the entrepreneur. And that's why when I would get in the house, I would still be checking my phone. I would still be thinking about the conversation. There was no transference into being dad. And that was a big deal. Our job is to move from role to role, from identity to identity during our days. Today, right now, you are an influencer. You are a conduit of information. And before you got on, we had a little pre-chat and you said, hey, this is what I'm hoping to accomplish. This is what I want to channel. And that gave us the alignment and the energy for you to be the host that you are. Tomorrow, when you wake up and you are, you're talking to a CEO of a company, you are a conduit for them to a bigger and better life. So you have to switch into a completely different role. And that's what it doesn't matter what you use. You just have to know two things. Number one, what state am I going to? Am I going from, business owner to dad? Okay, that's a state. Hey, I'm dad right now. That's cool. Declare it, but you need a state change. That can be dropping, going up and changing. That can be taking a walk around the block. My coach right now actually has a set of trigger words that she has for me. So I have like 8 trigger words that I read every time before I get on a podcast, before I get on stage, before I speak to a large group of people. It allows me to be and give and be very generous. And so I read these 8 words, and those 8 words vibrationally change me. And now I'm here to share and give. I'm very present. So it doesn't matter what it is. You just need to know that there's a state change that needs to happen. And and you just need something. And for some people it is, hey, as soon as I turn off the light, I should instantly go to bed. Not turn off the light and play on my phone. Because when you turn off the light, your body's like, well, am I going to bed or not? Like, am I going to play on the phone or not, right? So we want to just have a few triggers that instantly put us in the state that we want. And it can be anything. And I would always say, pick something joyful, which is walk around the block or do 3 jumping jacks. Just like get a workout out of it, right? Or like listen to a song or something like that. But having simple, like people are going to think this is hokey, but I will tell you, this is probably the most powerful thing as we go through and have to, wear multiple hats in our lives. The state changes get very, very powerful and become good triggers.
Interesting you say that, because without realizing, I do that before the podcast as well. Any podcast I jump onto, it's like about 10 minutes before I close my eyes, get into a really relaxed state. And then I try and fill my body with this emotion of enthusiasm so I can bring the full presence, vibrancy, energy to whoever I'm speaking to. And then hopefully it translates when someone's listening or watching. And I do that every single time. I have to, otherwise I just feel nervous. I'm not ready, So I hope that people can take that away and think about how do they want to start their day, or that activity that's going to change the course of their day, what can they do or say to themselves? As you said, it could be the smallest thing as reading trigger words, or eating something beforehand, or going into a meditative state. So interesting stuff. So now,
well, and here's the funny part.
Yeah, go on.
You love this. My son, who's 7, we have
Is that Neil or the other?
Neil, my son
Okay.
Neil, who's 7. He's in first grade. We have an affirmation that we do every morning. So Neil does it. He's sitting in the car seat. We pull into the school, and he does it with like all his hands and all his might. And we do it every time when I drop him off. Sometimes when my wife drops him off, he doesn't do it. My wife will say, "Hey, what's wrong with Neil? He was not his self today." I'm like, "Did he do his affirmation?" He goes, "No." And it's amazing. Like the next time he does it, he's in a completely different state. And he's like, "Hey, I am a gladiator. Winter is my season. This is my time." Like he does that. And it's insane because he does it. He's proud of it. And he'll do it naturally when we're making the turn into a school. And I see him from a quiet kid in his car seat to like this vibrant kid that just has come out of a shell. And that's a shift, right? That's a 6-sentence affirmation that he uses to just come out of a shell. And if a 7-year-old can do it, like you and I can do it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's powerful you say that, because I think the younger that you are, the more susceptible your brain is to making those neural connections, and so it becomes easier to ingrain those habits as you get older.
Right.
But let me go off a little bit of a tangent and ask you this, because you just touched on this. So the way you're bringing up Neil is obviously quite different to the way your dad brought you up. So I'm just wondering how does the upbringing that you're giving him change from the upbringing that you were given?
Yeah, a great question. You know, my wife and I are very aligned on how we're raising our children. For us, it's all about, we always talk about, hey, can we give them confidence? Like our job is not to, whether he chooses to become a doctor or a lawyer or like becomes a bum, like I can't help with that. But I believe that I want to give them confidence. And if I can give them this alert confidence and humility, things really work. So I always tell my children, there are 2 things that I care about. Are you kind? Are you confident? So when they see people at the store, etc., they're like, I ask for the hello, ma'am, how are you, ma'am? Because I want to bring the kindness and respect out in them. And that's programming, right? And then whatever I can do to provide for confidence. Those are the 2 things that we always, like my wife and I always share. And Vipul, like we live a very modest life. He doesn't have, he doesn't have chauffeurs driving him to school or anything like that. That's not how we're built. But he gets that there are rules. Like he gets 15 minutes of screen time 3 times a week. Like it's very simple. But my dad went out of his way to create a great life for me, and I'm trying to pass that on in the best way I know how. And the things that meant a lot to me was I became kind very late in my life. Like I was like 10 years ago, you would not want to talk to me. I was not a cool dude. My friends from 10 years ago wouldn't even recognize me right now. I was extremely commercial, extremely aggressive. I was a go-getter. I was like, it's my way or the highway. I like getting in fights. I would push the envelope. I would turn people off. I would do whatever it takes. I want the challenge. I want the butting of heads. I would create friction. And I wanted my self-esteem and my ego. Like I wanted it on top. I wanted to win. And over there, I just realized that there's a better way to do it. And I'm kind of ashamed. Like I'm ashamed of who I was. And it really hurts me. I broke a lot of promises. I hurt a lot of people when I was, 10, 15 years ago. And I'm a much different person now. Like I want to be my friend now. I'm a decent guy now. I'm a lot kinder now. And I'm thinking, hey, from what I've learned, if I'm more kind now, can I instill that kindness in my son?
Well,
yeah.
Yes. No, sorry to butt in there. I was just going to say, what changed?
My health totally broke down. And one of my coaches was telling me that I just needed to let go of this anger inside. And, for her, it was more philosophical. But I got to the point where I couldn't even wake up. I could barely eat anything. I was bedridden. I was so tired. my body was just crumbling, and I realized that it was not just about my body, but it was also about like this, just this person that I was, and this aggressive, angry person that I was, that I wanted to just win all the time. And she just said, hey, maybe it's time to replace this aggressiveness with a little kindness, and you'll just live longer, you'll be better, you'll speak softer, you will you will engage people more, people want to love and be around you more. And I'll tell you, I've got my depth of my friendships are so much deeper right now, and when you also start spending more time doing the things that you love, you end up being kinder, right? Otherwise you're this angry person doing stuff that you don't like all day. It's very frustrating.
Yeah. No, for sure. Definitely. I've seen the difference in the way that I approach people and life as well. Because when you come out of doing something that you don't like, the emotions that are attached to that are so weighted, you end up transferring that to people that you don't want to, like your friends and your family. And they just think like, what's wrong with him? And they naturally distance themselves. And then you get more angry because you know it's you. But then you get angry because you think it's them, and then it's you put yourself in this rut. So congrats to you for making that emotional shift and that mental shift. It's like I love the energy that you've got at the moment, and I think everyone listening can feel that as well. So
thank you.
Was that about the time that you were moving into Teles? Because I want to sort of get into that story.
Yeah, so all of that happened. So I'll give you the quick Teles story. So my a partner and mentor of a long time and I, we had invested in this small real estate company in Beverly Hills. It was just a few people. It was a startup, and it was a very passive investment. And my partner, who is my partner today, my mentor for 20 years, he was actually playing the more active role because he's a real estate guy. And then we just found that the company, the original founders had different points of view, and they were going in separate directions. So the company was kind of fracturing. So they called us in they called me and my partner in just to provide some advice, right? Just as investors. And I came in, I provided some advice because I was a banker in New York, and I shared some ideas. They implemented some of the ideas. It started to work, but the founders were still going in the wrong direction. So what me and my partner did, we realized that, hey, there's an opportunity here. If it needs good leadership, why don't we structure the company, get it back into the right path, and then let's find leadership, and then we'll go back to doing whatever we were doing before. So I left my job on Wall Street. I came out to California, and the goal was to package the company up so that it would be attractive for a young hotshot like you to come be the CEO. Well, I couldn't find a CEO. And so we said, okay, well, we're at a point where we need to make this exciting for us if we're going to work in it. So I said, hey, we're at 300 million-ish top line revenue right now, with, and rebuilding. So it was not like it was raining money, but I said, if we get to $3.4 billion in sales, everyone will have a good life. Like, this would be a good exit for everybody. And so everyone was like, how does that work? And I said, well, we have to do it in, generally market cycles are 7 years long. We need at least 2 years for some options to do things. So you have 5 years. So we have to do 10X in 5 years. So the math was not like, it was not like a spreadsheet or anything. It was more like, oh my gosh, we need to hit this number for it to be exciting. We have to do it in 5 because the market's going to crumble. So we need to do 10X in 5 years. So that self-fulfilling prophecy of 10X in 5 years got very, very exciting. And every time before we would do something, my team would ask me, hey, Sharran, why are you taking that meeting? Is it going to get us to 3.4 billion? Like that, they would keep asking me that. And that was singularity of focus, right? We keep only doing things that was the right thing for us. And that's when I was playing president, I was playing COO, I was playing CEO, I was playing all the roles. And I was like, I know everything. I touch everything. I control. I am the master of the universe. Nobody can do it as well I can, because I know everything. And like, that was the point where everything started to change, because my body was like, how can you keep track of 700 people and, so much revenue and so many offices? And people never realize, like, with more money comes a lot of issues. Like, there is hiring problems, lawsuits, there's like legal leases. There's so many things that happen. Sometimes I was like, hey, just give me a local coffee shop. Like, I want to run that. It was way easier. I can close at 4 o'clock. But that's when we hired our COO. I started spending more time in the joyful stuff. I started spending more time building culture. I started spending more time creating new ideas. I started spending more time thinking about growth. I started spending more time in my joy, and it's amazing, man. Like I tell you, I would pay to have a job where I only worked in my joy. I would pay. I don't even want I would pay. Like I would work nights doing something. I would pay for my day job to only work in my joy, because I can never, ever go back to, like, I have the startup grind right now. Like we started this company 120 days ago. We have thousands of users around the world, but I got to travel. I got to, I got to write press releases. I got to do everything. But I have a team, but I'm back to doing, I don't have an admin assistant anymore, because like the company's financial structure doesn't allow for it. Right. So, but working in your joy 80% of the time is a true gift.
That's amazing that it went from where it started to where you eventually took it. So what were the few things that you think were missing that the original founders weren't addressing or adhering that you came in quickly and realized?
Yeah. So this is, again, super three things. Only always singularity of focus. Why are we doing this? Right? Because everyone was like, each founder had a different vision for the company. And so every day they would wake up and founder A would do what he think was right. Founder B would do what she thought was right. Founder C would do, and then they would have no, momentum behind them. Right. So all I did was rally everybody and say, this is where we're going. You can either jump on the bus or see you later. Right. And so we got everybody singularity of focus. The second thing was what I like to call cadence of accountability. Accountability is super important. And I don't mean that in a guilt kind of way. I just mean that in a communication kind of way. So I'll give you a very simple example. I think if you're a business owner, entrepreneur right now, and even you with your team should think about this. If you want to grow something, you want to talk about it every day. So we wanted to recruit, you're in the recruitment business. We wanted to recruit great salespeople. And that was the big fueling fire for our business. Hey, bring people over with big books of business and that'll grow. And everyone would talk about it, but I was like, well, what are we doing about it? So every morning from 9:45 to 10 a.m., we would have a call. We had 11 sales managers who would recruit people. And the call would go just like this. It's the same format every morning. And think about this. Every person will go in order and they would say, here's what I did yesterday. Here's what I'm committed to doing today. So I would say something like, yesterday I met with Vipul and Jared. Vipul's not coming on board, but Jared is. I need to follow up. Today, I'm committed to making 3 more calls to getting 3 more meetings. That's my update. Then the next person goes. Then the next person goes. We do that. And then you come back the next day. You've already committed to making 3 calls and getting 2 appointments. If you didn't say that you did that, you look like an idiot. Right? Now, imagine the power of doing that every single day. Like our recruitment went like through the roof because people were thinking about it every day, and they had a joint commitment to the group. So the accountability was super powerful. So even today, anytime we want to build something, like we do what we call stand up in software development, or the daily huddle, 9:30 in the morning, we get together, 9:30 to 10, everybody talks about what they're going to do that day. Next morning, we're like, hey, Sharran, you said you were going to do this yesterday. I'm like, oh crap, right? So it's the cadence of accountability is super powerful. People don't want to let you down anymore. So they'll get it done. And once they start to get it done, it's really powerful. As soon as we can install cadence of accountability, organizations, their DNA and their success will just instantly shift. Instantly. So when I'm mentoring CEOs of companies, I always say, hey, what's the goal? Singularity of focus. What's the cadence of accountability? Like, are you going to email me every morning as to what you're doing? Okay, good. That's number 2. And the last thing is, good process drives good results, right? So the bigger you grow, the easier things are going to break. Like, you have a process. We chatted, you invited me, we got on the call. There was like, when do you get on? You then process your podcast. There are some show notes. You promoted, I promoted, and we try to make sure a lot of people get the message. And then I get you more guests on your show because I love speaking with you, and we grow, right? There's a process. It's not like, hey, Sharran, thanks for being on, peace. Like, that's not it. Like, that doesn't work. So good process drives good results. So I always tell the team, hey, that's cool. Like, if something is worth doing again, it needs a process. So I always tell the team, if it's one-off, if you need to run to the bank to get some cash, like I don't need a process for that. But if you're going to the bank to deposit checks every day, like you should have a process, because there's no reason to like hack this, right? So I just tell the team, good process drives good results. And if something is worth doing once more, it should have a process. And all the CEOs that I mentor right now and billions of dollars in sales and companies, I tell them the same thing. It's like every call that we start, if I was working and mentoring you, I would say, hey, what's the singularity of focus? Okay, awesome. What's your cadence? And what's good process? If we hit those three, now we build everything that we're doing around those three, and like life grows exponentially.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because now you're following a set routine almost every single day, and then it just feeds into the end goal, the end vision, whatever it might be. And so
Right.
all your decisions, all your thoughts, all your actions have to surround that one thing, so that it's done by the end of the day. So no, it makes a lot of sense, and I hope people can start taking some action around that, and to think about what it is that they want to achieve at the end of their day, or at the end of their week or month. So thanks for sharing all of that stuff. Now I want to get into the final 3 questions that I ask everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see what you'd say after your wild journey over the years. So with everything you've learned, all the stories you've encountered, everything that you shared with us today, is there anything different you would tell the 18-year-old Sharran?
So yes. What I would tell him is transformations don't happen in isolation. If there was anything that I could tell anybody, the gift that I can give anybody is, everyone believes that they can do amazing things on their own. And that's just wrong. Like, it's impossible. My favorite quote is, your best thinking got you here. Like, oh my gosh, your best thinking got you here. Transformations don't happen in isolation. And if I would do anything different, I would hire a coach or a mentor. I would get a paid coach or a mentor, not for any other reason than when you pay attention. I would get a paid coach or mentor as early as possible, so that it would completely have changed the trajectory of my life. Like, I would be a kinder person sooner. I would have found a COO sooner. I would have found my joy sooner. I would have found so many things so much sooner. And we want to buy time and buy speed. So if you have an opportunity to like work with Vipul or find a great coach or mentor, like, you should, because transformations don't happen in isolation.
Very important message. And I found that to be the case as well, because this show, let's just take this show, for example, like, it wouldn't have been great if it was just me on my own. Like, yeah, the episodes would have been half decent, but it's the guests such as yourselves that share the stories, wisdom, insights. I'm just there to extract the gold out of your head, so that they can enjoy and take away and learn from, hopefully. So the second question is, if there's anything you could write on a piece of paper, just a sentence or a statement that could be put into a time capsule for generations from now to dig up and read, what would you write to them?
I would write, so I always picture, like, call it my kids or grandkids or whatever. I would say, always think about a bigger and better future. Always think about a bigger and better future. It's so crazy, Vipul, that the only reason why people get depressed or get sad or get jealous or get whatever is because they believe that tomorrow is not going to be better than today. Like, that's the fundamental change. Like, a lot of times, I'll give you a funny example. Did you know that the people naturally lose weight when they just decide that they're going to work out? Like, they just lose weight because they feel better. They're like, their body is like psychosomatic. They instantly feel better. Like, if I just have not worked out in a while, but I'm going to commit to going to the gym every day for the next 6 days, like, I instantly feel better right now, which is amazing. It's amazing, right? That's why when you're looking forward to your vacation, you feel better today for a vacation that's coming up 3 months from now. Why? We're always joyful about a bigger and better future. We know that tomorrow is going to bring better than today. And when that gets reversed, when you see a darker future, that's when, like, crazy things start to happen. So my job is to give my children kindness and confidence to always think about a bigger and better future.
That's very true. As you were talking about it, it's very true, because there's so many people that are counting down to their vacations or their holidays, whatever it might be. And it hasn't happened yet. So why are you happy? And it's literally just the change in thought. So I think it's important for us to tweak that on a daily basis, to almost trick ourselves into thinking about something exciting. whether it's that day or that month or that year, or just, as you said, bigger and brighter future. Just paint it every day, add to the painting every single day, whatever it might be. And then soon enough, you'll start to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and then eventually you'll be there. You would be living it. So that's a really good one. And the final question is, you're now come to the end of your life, whatever age that might be, 90, 100, 110. You're looking back on your life. What's the legacy you hope to leave behind?
That's great question. I think about that a lot, and I don't. The big part of it, I'll tell you, is that it would be amazing if I could give to the world a little bit more kindness and a little bit more confidence. A little bit more kindness and a little bit more confidence. May that be in the form of my children doing what they're doing. May that be in the form of books, courses, podcasts like this, artifacts. If anybody took away anything today and they got a little kinder and more confident, their life would be so much better. We would all fight less, work more joyfully, create more, believe more. And if anything that we can do, if the legacy is just having this pixie dust of like kindness and confidence being sprinkled on the world, and that may come in the form of artifacts like a book or a movie, a podcast, whatever, but a little bit of kindness, maybe a little bottle of pixie dust of kindness and confidence would be a great legacy.
I love it. Now you're with your stories and your experiences that you're sharing, you're definitely on your way to accomplishing that. So what if people want to follow you on your journey and find out more about what you do and where you're going, how can they do that?
So the best way I'll tell you is I try to give away a lot of stuff on Instagram. Seems like a easy platform to share and give. So it's my full name, Sharran Srivatsaa on Instagram. So to grab it from Vipul's show notes, you can just search for me, Sharran. It's SHARRAN.com. It has everything on it. Nothing is paid for. Everything is free. Kindness and confidence. So follow me, and it's a chance for us to connect. I'm trying to I'm doing a lot of giveaways, a lot of books, a lot of courses. I'm just trying to give everything away because I get a chance to meet great people like you, learn from you guys, and then turn around and give it away so the world keeps going round and round. So, and then if anybody out there on the show, is thinking about mentoring, first reach out to Vipul, because I know you are, running a great program. There's a lot of people that if they're the right fits as well, that's one. But if I can be helpful, just reach out as well. And, the goal is always to be helpful.
Yeah, most definitely. I'll put that all in the show notes so everyone can reach out and get easier access to whatever it is that you've got going on. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know people are going to enjoy this one.
Awesome, Vipul. Thank you for having me.